Okay, so right now, America's most infamous budget airline is officially preparing to permanently ground its fleet. That's right, Spirit Airlines is facing an imminent shutdown. And this isn't just about losing cheap tickets to Florida either. Analysts are warning this collapse could trigger a massive 14% spike in airfares across the board. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're going to break down exactly how a massive $500 million White House rescue plan totally fell apart at the 11th hour, and what the death of this ultra-low-cost carrier actually means for your wallet.
To understand how this all unraveled, here's our roadmap for This Explainer. Section 1. Grounded. Spirit shuts down. Section 2. The failed government rescue. Section 3. Why the budget model broke. Section 4. Legacy airlines take flight. And Section 5. The future of flying.
All right, Section 1. Grounded, Spirit shuts down. We're looking at a completely fast-moving crisis right now. The cash has run dry, and the airline is preparing to cease all operations around 3 a.m. Saturday morning.
I mean, just look at this brutal market reaction. $1.04. Spirit's over-the-counter stock plummeted by as much as 72% on Friday, dropping straight down to roughly $1. This is Wall Street's stark realization that the airline is literally out of cash and the end is here.
And the fallout on the ground? It's pretty severe. We are talking about 17,000 Spirit jobs at extreme risk right now. The airline had already been shrinking, with its market share dropping from 5.1% down to 3.9%. But the aviation ecosystem doesn't just wait around. Competitors are already circling the wreckage. United Airlines is swooping in to absorb stranded passengers and add alternate flights, and they're openly eyeing Spirit's highly valuable airport slots at hubs like Fort Lauderdale and Newark. At the same time, American Airlines has stepped in to implement fare caps on those overlapping routes.
Moving to Section 2, the failed government rescue. So how exactly did we get to the brink of liquidation here? Let's look at the super dramatic final days of the airline and a highly unusual federal lifeline.
Because for a hot minute, it actually looked like Spirit might be saved. The Trump administration stepped in, considering a massive $500 million bailout. In exchange for this huge cash infusion to fund the airline's exit from bankruptcy, the U.S. government would have received warrants to purchase up to 90% of the company. That would have been a massive government stake in a private enterprise.
But here are the mechanics of how this unprecedented deal completely unraveled over the last 10 days. Step 1. President Trump demanded that the government must have first priority on debt repayment if the airline fails, an America First condition, basically. Step 2. The bondholders push back hard. While unsecured creditors actually agreed to the deal, the major bondholders, we're talking massive firms like Citadel, Cyrus Capital, Ares, and PIMCO, absolutely refused to be bumped down the priority list. They pointed to Spirit's millions in operational losses and decided they'd rather just liquidate the assets than try to fix a money-losing company. Which brings us to Step 3. The bailout talks collapsed entirely. You simply can't force a deal if the major creditors holding $3 billion in debt decide the company is a goner.
Section 3. Why the budget model broke. To really grasp this story, we've got to zoom out. Spirit wasn't just killed by a failed negotiation this week. It had some serious pre-existing conditions. The foundation of this whole thing is a concept Spirit pioneered in the U.S. back in 2006. The ultra-low-cost carrier, or ULCC. The core assumption here in a deregulated market was simple but powerful. If you offer bare-bones, dirt-cheap flights, you'll outcompete the massive legacy carriers strictly on price. And honestly, for a long time, it worked. Sure, we all complained about paying extra for a bottle of water or printing a boarding pass, but we absolutely loved those cheap tickets. But in the post-pandemic economy, this fundamental assumption completely shattered.
Just track this timeline with me. It reveals an incredibly rapid, fatal descent. It starts in 2024, when a federal judge acting on an antitrust suit from the Biden administration blocked a $3.8 billion merger with JetBlue. The government argued keeping Spirit independent was better for budget travelers. Well, an independent Spirit couldn't survive. By November 2024, they filed for Chapter 11. They managed to emerge in March 2025, but were immediately hit by a catastrophic external shock, the U.S.-Iran war. Over a matter of weeks, jet fuel prices literally doubled. For an airline already bleeding cash, this was the fatal blow, leading directly to where we are in May 2026, prepping for liquidation.
Now you might be wondering, if fuel prices doubled, shouldn't every airline be going bankrupt? That brings us to Section 4, Legacy Airlines Take Flight. Why are the big legacy carriers flying high while budget airlines are drowning?
This stark comparison tells you everything you need to know about the current aviation market. Look at these numbers from last year. Spirit took a devastating $2.7 billion net loss, carrying a negative 22% operating margin. Now contrast that with Delta Airlines. They pulled in a massive $5.8 billion operating profit with a positive 9.2% operating margin. They're operating in the exact same sky, paying for the same wildly expensive jet fuel, dealing with the same pilot shortages and inflation, yet the outcomes are entirely opposite.
And because of that crazy dynamic, the market has heavily calcified. As aviation expert Dan Akins points out, the big four carriers, Delta, United, American, and Southwest, now control a massive 80% of the U.S. domestic seat share. All the remaining airlines are left fighting over just a tiny 20% of the market.
So what exactly is the legacy advantage? Why did they survive? Well, first, consumer behavior totally shifted post-pandemic. Travelers emerged with this pent-up desire for premium, comfortable experiences. They essentially abandoned basic economy. Second, legacy carriers make absolute billions from their incredibly sticky credit card loyalty schemes. Third, a strong US dollar has fueled highly profitable long-haul and international tourism. And finally, because of their massive scale and premium revenue, they actually have the financial cushion to absorb those fuel price shocks that simply vaporize Spirit. That is exactly why Delta's stock is up 60% and United's is up 35% over the past year.
And trust me, the legacy carriers know this. United CEO Scott Kirby bluntly stated, "Moments of uncertainty create opportunity." He is actively using this moment of competitor distress to push for a mega merger with American Airlines. Kirby argues that combining their scale is the only way to effectively compete against foreign-flagged carriers who currently fly 65% of long-haul seats into the U.S. Now, Trump currently opposes this merger, as it would create a behemoth controlling 40% of the U.S. market, but the push for consolidation is incredibly aggressive right now.
Section 5. The future of flying. Because the collapse of Spirit Airlines isn't just a business failure. It sparked an intense political and economic debate in Washington.
This is the huge central question currently gripping Washington. Should the government even step in to save a dying airline? This crisis has ignited a massive ideological battle between free market capitalism, where failing businesses are allowed to die so the market can naturally correct itself, and the push for government intervention to save jobs and maintain competition for consumers.
To give you a sense of the pushback, former Obama Treasury counselor Stephen Ratner sharply criticized the proposed Spirit rescue in a recent op-ed. He argues that while the Obama-era auto bailout saved an enormous systemic industry totally crucial to the Midwest's economy after deep analysis, Trump's $500 million proposal was aimed at propping up one single chronically unprofitable company without those same strict conditions. It perfectly encapsulates this intense debate over when and how the government should deploy taxpayer funds into the private sector.
But guys, the alarm bells are ringing way beyond just Spirit. Other struggling low-cost carriers like Frontier and Allegiant have warned that this could be a broader industry failure. The Value Airlines Association is actually asking the government for $2.5 billion in loans right now, and they're requesting a suspension of the 7.5% federal excise tax on tickets just to help combat these fuel prices. This crisis is even prompting experts like Vanderbilt law professor Ganesh Sitaraman to suggest we might need to entirely re-regulate the aviation market. He's floating ideas like returning to pre-1970s route distribution and mandating a duty to serve to ensure airlines don't just abandon less profitable rural areas.
Which leaves us with this final critical thought. When the dust finally settles on Spirit Airlines, who will actually be able to afford to fly? If the ultra-low-cost budget models fundamentally cannot survive in today's economy, and the giant legacy carriers just continue to consolidate their power and hike up prices, what happens to us, the average consumer? The era of the $50 weekend getaway might just be grounded for good. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep an eye on the skies because the turbulence in this industry is far from over.